Hi everybody and anybody. So Sunday night, 11 o'clock, excellent time to stream. But I want to go over the weekend demonstration in Dublin, nationalist demonstration, kind of against criticising mass immigration and all that. So I wasn't there, and I want to watch some of the speeches and stuff like that. So that's what I was going to do with my late evening. Sorry, I'm just fixing the screen, and that's what I was going to do. So I said I might as well go live. I wasn't there. I wanted to go, sort of had FOMO, sort of chose not to go. I was down in Cork. I've been to a lot of these. There was some other stuff that's kind of important to me, and I kind of made a choice to let this one happen. You know, you don't always have to be there. These things will go ahead just fine without you. I would have liked to, but again, there was just something else I wanted to kind of prioritize. So yeah, hi everybody, anybody in the chat. Chat is lively. Hello, seeing a few familiar faces there, or names. Yeah, so I don't know. I'll just kind of talk a little bit about the demo in general from the perspective of watching kind of online. Then I want to watch. I've picked two choice speeches, Patrick Quinlan and Gavin Pepper. So they are from sort of slightly different milieus, but they're both popular. They both put in a lot of groundwork. I just think they're both great in their own ways. And I heard sort of through the grapevine online, that they were good speeches. So, you know, I could watch all of them. I don't know who spoke exactly, but I just heard two of those speeches in particular were well reviewed. So I want to watch those, try to catch up, because I haven't seen much. I saw a few. There was Phil Dwyer. There were a bunch of people streaming, and they all got potato cams from what I could see, because I was trying to follow it at the time. But I don't know what happens when big events are on, live streams go to shit. So I didn't see much of that. Then I saw some of the footage afterwards. I saw Conor McGregor's sort of bit he did at the Garden of Remembrance. And I haven't seen all that much from it. And then there's, of course, crowd-sized debates going on. Some people are saying Conor McGregor was saying it was 106,000. Other people are saying 5,000. Who knows? Either way, it was a big crowd. Split the difference, maybe. But it was a big crowd. Biggest one yet. So, I mean, what more is there to say on that? It's a successful event, went off without a hitch, no drama, no big, huge provocations happened. And that's what you're aiming to achieve. You're not looking to come out of something like this with like a utopian revolution or something like that. Not going to happen. No, you should not go into it believing that the likes of that will. Councillor Patrick Quinlan, I'm corrected in the chat, excuse me, and I apologize. But Councillor Patrick Quinlan and Councillor Gavin Pepper, of course. But you know, you have to pay the respect, like, you know what I mean? But so, you know, you don't go into it expecting. That's the thing. People with like little local elections that don't, you know, pan out as like a nationalist government, or, you know, it's not that successful at all, or a demo happens and people come away the next day. Some skeptical people say, what changed? It's like nothing's really going to literally change from a demo. What you want to achieve is you're sort of putting your stamp on the national conversation a little bit. If you get, I'm going to say, like, all jokes aside, I'll say maybe it was 10,000 people there. Could be a bit more or less. 10,000 people on the street. By all accounts, there were a lot of young people there. Like a notable amount of young people at it. So that's good. You know, I remember years ago at the pro-life meetings, not disrespecting old people, with age comes wisdom and all that. But these meetings, you would just see a sea of grey and bald heads, and God bless them. But you're not going to have any success with just that. You need a mix, and you need a strong cohort of young people, of course, for sort of reasons that needn't be like belabored. And I hear that there were a lot of young people at this. There were obviously a lot of the usual things, women, families, a mix of demographics, not just a strange underground ragtag group or something like that. You have a really holistic, healthy, normal group of people. By group, I mean 10,000 people out, and there's no drama, there's no clashes or any of that, because of course the media are always looking for clashes, so-called, as a sort of headline. But yeah, none of that. So basically, mission accomplished. 10,000 people come out, doesn't have any tangible difference, but it matters that you get 10,000 people out. Everyone looks good. Everyone is normal. It means that the next time there's something like this, maybe it's 15,000, and the growth effect could be huge as well. You know, you can have normal attracts normal in a way, right? And weird attracts weird. That's one of these things. So when people see that, hey, a lot of people went to that, you have Councillor Patrick Quinlan and Gavin Pepper and all the rest speaking, and you have all the live streamers and the nationalists, and you've Conor McGregor, big star, you've all that going on. Sure, great. They take a lot of heat and a lot of flack. But if you're a normal, non-public profile person, the issue you will have with coming to something like this is that someone says, caress that like, please. Yeah, I sure do. I don't know what it does, but go ahead. Thank you. But, you know, if you're that person, basically, as far as we've come, people will still be apprehensive about coming out because they have jobs, they have mortgages, they have sports clubs and blah, blah, blah. And they're thinking, all this lark about far right and trouble. Am I going to be in the crosshairs if I attend, or is it acceptable? Is it authorized or not authorized for me as a non-public figure to go? And of course, from what I know, there's been no one, and it's not possible either. I'm not trying to give like the Antifa and the media ideas here. I don't think it's tenable that you have 10,000 people there walking down O'Connell Street from the Garden of Remembrance, ending up at the Custom House Quay, and some randomer being photographed just standing in the crowd, and their workplace being identified, their name being doxed. This person is so and so. They were at this demonstration. They are therefore far right extremists, something like that. That's not happening. It's not possible. You can't take a crowd of 10,000 people and thin the herd like that. You can't do that, because people, of course, this targeted person then could just say, I was just at this thing. I thought it was about just, you know, we're sick of the way the country's going and something about mass immigration and unvetted men. You know, you could take your pick at what level it is. But the person has plausible, not deniability, but plausible defense, power in numbers, that type of thing. There's a little bit of there's a power in numbers there, not in terms of physical force or anything like that, but just morale, in a sense, political correctness, something like that. You understand what I'm saying, basically, I'm sure. But that in itself is a major thing. And once you get to your numbers like 10,000 people, that phenomenon, that fear sort of goes away, and other people perhaps will pick up on that. So, you know, there is no reason. Like, we were at demonstrations in years gone by of 1,000 people celebrating. At that point, it was a fact to celebrate that. Wow, we have 2,000 people. This is a big deal. We used to be getting so harassed by Antifa in equal numbers if we just showed our faces. Anyone who was there would be potential doxing, the rest of it, cancellation, whatever it is, for job sackings and all that. And I would have people show up, people I knew anonymously who would show up. I'd be standing there talking to a few people, and they'd come up and they'd like give me a fist bump or a handshake, and they would have like a hood up and like funny glasses on and stuff like that, because that was the atmosphere, that was the totalitarianism, we'll say, and that's what it is, really. I don't want to go on here, but you know, that totalitarianism, that kind of Solzhenitsyn, like the greengrocer, that's Havel or whatever. But this kind of like, I always talk, if you're familiar with listening to me, you'll know I always talk about this stuff. But this idea we have of totalitarianism, the type of thing you learn about, it's like ingrained in the Harry Potter story. It's ingrained in liberal education. Like, if you're a Western liberal or just a Western person raised on a liberal education about whether it's World War II or gulags or any of this, we were all raised on this idea of the spooky totalitarianism, and we were trained. In a way, it's a bit of an Achilles heel of liberal indoctrination. They kind of gave us that, And a lot of it was kind of true. The study of totalitarianism, the things to watch out for. It's like, again, another thing I always talk about, a cult. Any cult, Jim Jones or whatever, it's often going to be like some sort of bride gathering, sexual self-satisfaction cult on behalf of the leader. They will get you to cut off your friends, la la la. We all know what the features of a cult are, and we also know what the features and the aesthetic features of totalitarianism are, regardless of the underlying ideology. And some of those, I was just thinking about this evening when I saw the crowd, a big, healthy, solid, normal crowd there. And it just reminded me of an era in like 2016, 2017, when I was kind of maybe a little bit earlier, even when I was getting into this stuff. And I'm not trying to say I was the OG or the success since then has anything to do with me. It's just an observation. It's just something I watched more so, is the growth in that. And I tweeted this earlier, that I remember back then my first foray into this stuff was maybe 2017, 16, 15, somewhere then, where I was I kind of found I was tweeting like somewhat nationalist or whatever stuff on my Twitter account, and I was not anonymous. It was fairly mild, and it maybe caught the attention of a few like-minded people, and I got added into a group chat of like 10, 15 people, many of whom I know and I'm good friends with to this day, as it happens. But 10, 15 people, and at some point there was a meeting organized, and it was in Dublin, because most of them are Dublin and whatever. And I was living in Cork at the time, and I drove up to Dublin just for this meeting. There's just a little bit of background. This puts the demonstration just this weekend gone into context. And yeah, I drove up, and I all of the rest of them were pretty much anonymous, bar one or two. And I felt like almost like a weirdo, you know, like I'm not even really telling people in my real life what I'm going for. I'm going up for a thing or whatever. And to me, it's weird, because it's this right-wing nationalist political kind of thing, and the people I'm meeting, who are they? I don't really know, to be honest. And is it a formal thing? No, not really. So meeting strangers online, that type of thing, for niche political reasons, just kind of strange. And it's a big step. And I went up, got to Dublin. I didn't really know Dublin at the time. Ventured out into like the suburbs, out past Glasnevin, Killester, God knows, I don't know. One of these kind of random, could be anywhere, non-specific, in a bit west in Dublin, not posh Dublin. And I get there, and it's I don't know if it's even worth telling this story. I mean, it's I'll just tell you the story. It's a little anecdote. But I get there, and it's a sports club, one of these like working man sports clubs or something like that, you know, where people watch football, and there's a little recreational areas and stuff like that. I get in, walk up the stairs to this pub. There's a few lads sitting down having pints. There's maybe a match on, and I'm sitting there for ages, and I can't get through to the people I'm trying to contact. I'm a bit late, as I always, and I sit around kind of waiting. I maybe order a drink, sit there. I'm waiting for someone to pick up on me, maybe, because I'm like, maybe you recognize me because I have a picture. And nothing happens. And eventually I go up to the barman, and I go, I'm just here to meet some people for, I don't even know what to call them. I don't even know what the names are. I'm here just meeting some people for like a meeting type thing or whatever. I'm like stumbling over my words, because I don't even know what to tell him. I don't even know if I'm crazy or not. And he kind of gives me a nod and gestures and walks away as if to follow him. I do, and he walks me down a kind of a hall and another hall, and then he just kind of gestures to the door to me. He goes, they're in there. And then I knock on the door and open it up, and inside in this room, which is, I don't know, I was going to say it's half the size of the room I'm in now, but you can't see that. It's a small room, let's just say, right? Probably like a box room in a small house. There's maybe 8 people in there. It bare white kind of brick, like very sterile walls. And there's like 8 people in there, huddled in, knee to knee almost, in their chairs. And they're already into it. They're talking about nationalism. They're talking about immigration and this and that and demographics. And I get in, I like say my hello, and the thing is, everybody's apprehensive. For the most part, they don't want to give me their names. So I'm talking to Era 321 or whatever it is, and I say, "Oh, I'm Garrod. Nice to meet you. What's your own name?" And they go, and this is jarring to me. They go, "Oh, OPSEC or whatever, this kind of thing." And I know they have reason to be, because I've seen the doxings, I've seen the harassment. I know that, but it's still jarring to think, wow, you're afraid. Maybe I am a bit too, but people are wary. And over the years since then, I had many more, in those early years, many more meetings like that with OPSEC, people well, people you've met many times, you still don't know their name because you're operating on this very stringent, tight sort of operational security basis. And of course, that's a feature of totalitarianism. And we're looking at the time, Antifa have kind of gone away, melted away, they're weak, they're defeated, and all that. And the NGOs don't have so much power. And this is what I'm getting to. A lot of that has melted away now, but it's worth considering that only 7, 8, 9, 5 to 10 years ago, we were in a world of hardcore totalitarianism. We still have some stuff now, but back then it was really hardcore. If a group of 20 nationalists said they're going to meet in Dublin and go around the streets handing out flyers, they would have been attacked by a bunch of people in balaclavas and beaten up, and the guards would have turned their backs and said nothing, and all the rest of it. We know the story. You saw what happened in, I think, County Fermanagh with National Party. That's insane. If you're not familiar with that, just kind of look it up. But that stuff was normal, and we were sort of trained by experience to operate within those conditions, and it was very underground, and it was very much like being in a cartoon secondary school history book description of a totalitarian society where your dissident political movement must operate underground, and people have to have layers of different identities and protection and all of this. With this demonstration this weekend, you feel that going away. It's been going away for a few years now. I think it began in COVID. COVID was sort of this jumping off point. The likes of ISD, Institute for Strategic Dialogue, I think it's called. Anyway, the Facebook global company funded, government funded spy agency, effectively. They commented in a big way on this in the last few years, that COVID, and I agree with them, of course, very often they are correct. They have a different, let's say, view of it, but they're correct in what they're observing. That COVID was this sort of breakdown period, and it involved a lot of people who were a bit schizo and all that. I'm not commenting good or bad, just as a matter of fact. People with a lot of alternative sensibilities. They're basically anyone who didn't want to fully subscribe to the regime narrative on this big issue that is pressing in on our lives. Anyone at all. So it could be a schizo, sort of someone who's out there, thinks everything's fake, everything's crazy, aliens, whatever. It could be that person, but it could also be just a granny of 70 years of age, a nurse in Kerry, this, that, the other. I can think of many examples, a whole range of people. There is a broad spectrum. It wasn't just schizos, of people who might formally have considered themselves, well, I wouldn't be racist, or I wouldn't be extremist, or I wouldn't be anything like that, which is what hitherto the politics of nationalism, no matter how reasonable, was described as. Those people had these sort of the blindfold lifted off them, and they realized that, oh, okay, so all I'm saying is that I don't want to take the vaccine. You know what I mean? I might not even be that COVID skeptical. I just don't want to take that. And I do believe it's kind of strange that yours doesn't work unless I take mine, and I can't go into a restaurant unless I'm having it's not safe unless I'm eating a meal over €10. All this nonsense, crazy, insanity sort of was a big jumping off point, and a lot of people sort of became inured to the whole idea of far right and of blacklisting the person next to you. So, oh well, I'm not far right, maybe he is, selling the person down the river who's a little step to the right or whatever, to the more of you, more of like a little bit more explicit or something than you are. All that went away, and I just think people completely abandoned it, and then it spread, and then of course there's the transgender stuff. There's the more important than any of this was the proliferation of asylum centers, which began in East Wall in, what was it, 21, just after COVID. People were really sick of a lot of this stuff, and it went on, and then you had the Garda beatings and the pepper sprayings and the media doing far right articles every 5 seconds. People got sick of it, and that's a bit of a dead horse by now, and it carries no weight. And so we circle back to the people who are at this demo, who cannot be isolated as an ordinary attendee, as some sort of, you have been located and pictured at this event, therefore you are XYZ. It doesn't work anymore. So that's a big thing. That's a big containment feature that is lifted. If you go on a live stream chatting away to me or whoever, maybe they can hang you for that. But now you can definitely go to a big demonstration and it's still cool. And on the other hand, the beauty of it is, in my view, is that you could say, well, that comes at a cost. That comes at a cost where a whole new host of messiahs, nationalist leaders and influencers and all of that, there's a whole new breed drafted in, and they're so moderate and they're so tripping over themselves to make excuses and say, I'm not this or I'm not that. And they're strictly only talking about certain forms of immigration, and they will hang anyone to the left or right of them who is a little bit more direct than they are, and the rest of it. If that were the case, I would say, well, that's a bit of a Faustian bargain, because now you have the normalization, you have the scale, but you've lost the spirit of it. And the key feature there is the blacklisting of people. Some people are a bit extreme. Maybe you can't have everyone. We can't speak in absolutes here necessarily. But as a general rule of thumb, is it falling over itself like conservative movements we've had before? A classic feature is this whole thing of buttoning up and trying to gatekeep effectively. That's a very suspicious, that optics angle can go a bit overboard, right? And it can be a sign of nefarious institutional kind of control of it. The system is co-opting the revolution, not the other way around, etc. But, you know, you have Patrick Quinlan. Patrick Quinlan, for example, was in the National Party. But I'm not even a National Party hater, whether the old version, new version. There's no version of like radical speech or whatever that I'm actually, personally, I'm not really bothered. I mean, I'm an open-minded fella about almost all views and aesthetics, and I don't really care. But what I'm saying is that Patrick Quinlan, for example, he's from the old guard. He's been around for years with nationalism. You could call, I don't want to like start using these buzzwords like ethno-nationalism or start describing views to him, but what I mean is he's not a civic nationalist. Let's put it that way, right? And he's got associations with the National Party and all the rest of it, right? And you've others. I don't mean to square in on him. Patrick's an ordinary fella and all that, and you know, he shouldn't have any of that kind of baggage. But what I mean is, he's not being kicked off the stage. You know, Phil is there streaming away. You name it. For the most part, it's an open enough house, and it's not trying to exercise. I mean, like The Exorcist in that sense, not trying to expunge more radical elements. There's no guilt by association games going on. There's none of that necessarily happening, and that's a good sign. So basically, you have the growth, the normalization, but you're sort of keeping the spirit there to some extent. There'll always be a bit of, well, he said this. He said we're not racist. You should never say that, because that's admitting some sort of guilt and this and blah blah blah. Some people will come out with sloppy rhetoric and they'll say this, and you might not love it, or you might not like this guy or that guy. But overall, it's decent, is what I'm trying to say. So to have those two things happening at once is excellent. And I'm belaboring the point, but you know, that's why this matters. Nothing tangibly happens from a demonstration, but it's always about the intangibles with these things. They do matter. I don't want to overstate it, but they do matter. There is a purpose to it at the end of the day, and it's looking forward to the next one. And look, if you have 10,000, maybe the next one or the following one, who knows? but at some point you have 20,000, you might have 30,000. Ultimately, if you ever want to see a day where you have 70,000 people, or, you know, a real like big crowd, right? Proper. Well, you're only going to get there by doing this one. This one was 10,000. The last one was maybe closer to 5,000. The last one was 4, 3, 2, 1, etc. So that's a big deal. But the other thing I was going to say about it was that, of course, at these things, networking happens. And that's another important thing I wanted to mention. I feel like I've lost chat. So I know there's a lot of you, maybe it's just frozen or something. Or maybe you've just gotten over the chat. But the viewers are there, but the chat seems to have just stopped. I don't know. Anyway, so the other important thing is the networking effect that happens. And that's very real. So you look at a crowd of 10,000 people, but don't forget that among that crowd, you have individuals and you have families, you have groups, you have micro sort of groups, factions, all sorts of stuff, right? And they are all schmoozing. They're all meeting. They're all shaking hands, right? Physical act, looking each other in the eye. And that's a big difference. It matters. I do like live streaming and posting online and all that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't be attending these things being some sort of big mad celebrity by any means. But obviously it's a niche audience. So within that crowd, I'll like have people saying hello and getting recognized and stuff like that. And there's just something about it from my perspective. Sort of take one of you in the chat or something. One of you comes up to me and says, "How's it going? I'm so-and-so. Nice to meet you." And it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's mad. Because to you, I'm speaking on a screen. I probably look a bit different. And of course, to me, you look a bit different because you're a real person. And I see you're just a cool guy or whatever. It's pretty normal, kind of upstanding, healthy looking guy and all that. Someone's there with their girlfriend, their mother, their father, whatever. And it's just like such an impactful thing to happen that very moment. Everything is different from there on in. It's a changed relationship, if you, as such. And then you have just, and that's from my perspective, let's say, but it's the same for everybody. It could be two random people who've never met, but they know they do meet and they go, you know, they take contacts. It could be two sort of factions who differ on a minor ideological dispute. It's something about rhetoric or direction or something like that, that maybe online they would be a little bit hostile and cautious of each other in some way. But of course they end up meeting, chatting away, they have a drink, they swap numbers, they just talk away. That changes that. So, okay, well, we know each other now. I've met you, I've talked to you. And it also reinforces a person's sort of commitment. So if they've been hitherto just kind of commenting online, watching things online, posting online, that's great. But when you show up, and let's say it's your first time going to one of these things, you see 10 odd thousand people, and you meet all these people face to face and eye to eye and shake hands, you kind of come away with a refreshed sense of commitment. You go, do you know, there are times where there is a small voice in the back of my head thinking, maybe it is a bit strange that these sort of obscure political things, which in one abstract sense sort of have nothing to do with me, and what can I do? And maybe it's just a form of entertainment or boredom or loneliness. Who knows what it is? You know, I don't know. Sometimes you could, you know, think that way, and it's sort of understandable. Because you're sitting there either looking at a rectangle in your hand or whatever. You know, you see all these people, there's massive people in town, the guards shutting the streets, onlookers bypass, you know, looking on, what's this thing that's going on? You meet all the people, you enjoy the atmosphere. It just reminds you that, oh yeah, this is real, I'm real, it's all real, and it's good and it's positive and it matters. And there's all these other people who came from around Dublin, around Ireland, all over the place to attend this thing. This is real, you know, so that's a massive thing as well. So it makes it feel real, and it also makes it feel legitimate, because of course the power in numbers, sort of the strong horse or whatever, it gives you that sense. So I would say that is another factor. There, like, I could almost go on and on. There are some of it is sort of explaining the obvious in a way, but there are so many reasons why this is such a good thing in general always. So I've lost what I was looking for there. So I don't know. Yeah. And I mentioned Conor McGregor in specific. You know, I was thinking of him as I should be doing, right? Because he's getting into this stuff now, has been for a few years. More like the White. I mean, it's crazy to think about the White House. Tucker Carlson, now he's in the Garden of Remembrance. I have a lot of time for his commitment. He could just kind of, as some people might criticize him for, I don't know, it's a form of PR leveraging or something like that. But I just I don't know him. I'm not a mind reader either, even if I did know him. But, you know, the consistency, the commitment, that definitely has to stand for something. You know what I mean? A couple of weeks ago, he's in the White House raising the flag, sort of literally. Then he's doing the thing with Tucker Carlson. I spoke about this a few nights ago. And now he's hearing, you know what I mean? He's putting the work in, as they say, right? And there's a lot to be said for that. But I was thinking of it through his point of view, and it's sort of, when I was speaking about what it's like for people to attend, all the different types of people who might attend, I was getting that, thinking about him attending, and he's at the end of the day, he's big celebrity, all that. At the end of the day, strip all that away, he's just another person. He's a person who's been around the block, the yachts, the fights, the whatever, everything, right? But, you know, still just a person as well. And he's been watching this, and he's been a huge focal point. So online, his notifications blowing up. He's a controversial figure politically now. The regime don't like him, and all the rest of it. But up until at the weekend, was it Saturday? Of course it was Saturday. Up until Saturday, I imagine he's never been at something like this. So I was kind of trying to look at it from his point of view. That such a hitch-free, positive event, large-scale event went off, and he got to see it. Trying to imagine what that might have come across like to him, if that makes sense. You know, he had the White House thing. Like, it's a fanfare. I don't know what it's like there, but you know, I imagine it's sort of it must be kind of stuffy. You know, it's like you going to a wedding or something. It's like everyone's suited up. You're standing around, getting it's President of America, like the media, all that. It must be intense, kind of strange. But he did it. He showed up. He performed, let's say, and did the same with Tucker Carlson. Again, the same story. An interview, Tucker Carlson tried to be like political and, you know, trying to pull off like come across the right way and do your thing. And again, that's just sitting in a room, walking around Dublin a bit. But then this is different. To me, this is much better because, and the Black Forge as well, you know, the open invite thing. I'm not criticizing that. I'm not criticizing him or anyone who was there overall. But one of the senses I had was that at that there was going to be potential for, and I know lots of people who I like and admire who were there, obviously, but there was potential for weirdos and lick arses, right, to flock to that, kind of show up, and everybody itching to shake his hand, talk to him and all that, which is grand, fine. But it could be a bit funny, you know, a bit off in a way from the perspective of him as the center of attention. I'm just trying to put myself in those shoes. But then you get to, here's what I'm getting at, is that the difference is that he gets to the Garden of Remembrance and down O'Connell Street, and he sees it all. And I don't know how much he was mixing, whatever, but he sees it all. He's there. He has, on one hand, the experience of everyone's looking at him. People who are like 20 meters away, they're looking. You see people pointing, gesturing to their friend. There he is. That must be weird. And hands coming out of every direction, shake his hand, slap him on the back and all that. It can actually, that kind of thing can get disorienting. So that's on one hand. He's looking at it from his Conor McGregor life, which is none of us can ever experience. He's seeing it through that lens. But on the other hand, of course, he gets to, unlike the other experiences, look over the crowd of 10,000 people and realize that they're all talking to each other as well. Like if I wasn't here, if I disappeared, or if I was invisible, this would all be going on anyway. This is so you get that sort of objective look at something healthy and positive and successful that isn't necessarily all eyes on you. It's actually just happening of its own accord. And all these normal people, ordinary, everyday Irish people, are talking to each other. I've had this experience myself, but I'm just, it must be dialed up more intensely with him because of who he is. That you're looking at all these, you thought it was a bit online, you thought it was niche. Even with Tucker Carlson, you thought it was like a political sort of audience, political kind of online thing or something. And now you're seeing a mammy with her baby in a baby harness, and you're seeing a couple arm in arm walking down the street, and just all the people you've known in your life, all different types of normal people are all there, the entire variety, and they're all there having a good time, and they're here for the same cause that, broadly speaking, the same cause that you think is important. And I feel like, you know, you might say, why am I talking about Conor McGregor? Like, what's the significance? I'm not quite sure, to be exact, but I thought of it from his point of view and how refreshing and uplifting it must have been, in particular, even versus all the other things, the White House and all that, to see that, because that's what it's all about. That's how important it is. I've had that feeling. I'm sure he's had that feeling. And then similarly, as I was kind of talking about a little while ago, you know, random person who's no public profile whatsoever, they're online, they watch stuff online, but they got a train up from Tullamore or whatever, and they're here now, and they maybe came by themselves or with their friend or something. They're having the same experience. They are having the same positive experience as Conor McGregor is having. It's this unity of the crowd, this equalization of the mass, in a way, that everybody comes together and there's this collective shared spirit that happens. So anyway, maybe I'm just rambling along on it, but I just think I'm really pleased with that. If I were to showcase the best of things to someone, to an alien from outer space, to a friend from Japan who has no idea who's what or what means what, I just said, there's this thing I'm into, here's the general views. Is it weird? Is it not weird? Is it successful? Is it, you know, if I brought them to that, they'd say, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. I now know you're not some sort of crazy freak, outsider, extremist, this, that, or the other. And yet, and we move on now to the speeches, the message isn't totally bastardized. I haven't listened to these speeches. I'm assuming they're diplomatic. You're not going to the hardest core piece of rhetoric for the speech. You're being a bit diplomatic, you're being a bit positive and all that. But at the same time, there are nuggets of, you know, nobody's coming out and saying, hey, anybody in the world can be Irish. I don't mind immigration so long as they're vetted. You know, it's not all just that. It's going to be, you know, you're going to get, the message is still there and the personnel are still there. And so you're still getting the real deal for all the sunshine and roses and buttercups and lollipops that I'm sort of singing the praises of here. You're not really losing the message. I think everyone in the crowd gets the gist, and everyone speaking gets the gist, and it's not overly cryptic, and it's just, it is what it is. So again, you're getting the progress without totally losing the substance. So let's start with Patrick Quinlan's speech. Let's just watch it. I won't even comment too much, you know, why should I? So I mean, give me a heads up there. If the audio is good, maybe let me know. If it's bad, let me know. And let's just have a look. So this is Councillor Patrick Quinlan. Second big speech at the Custom House. The first one was great. I don't know when it was, a few months ago, a year ago, something like that. So here we go. Have a look.
What is happening?
Sorry to interrupt it. Someone says the Malachy Steenson speech was really good. I'll probably I definitely will watch it, right? I'm going to follow up on it. This is not at the exclusion of anyone, you know how it is. I heard those two names mentioned here and there. I'm watching these. For all I know, there were amazing speeches given by other people. I'm just, I have to pick a few out of a hat, really. I'm not going to watch them all. So anyway, with that said.
You love to see it. Let's go. I want to make this very quick, very brief. Thank you. It is a speech I have prepared a good while before today, and I'm going to deliver it here now. I think it's very prevalent that it is spoken here today. Our sacred Ireland, it's a reality we have to face, is failing. Its soul has been dimmed by the betrayal of the den of rats inside of Dáil Éireann. And I know you can all feel it, otherwise we wouldn't be here. Once upon a time, the Irish people were bound to something beyond ourselves. Some call it God, some call it Tuatha Dé Danann, some call it Firbolg, whatever. It was that divine spirit that was connected to us. It was that holy fire that blazed in our patriot dead. All the way from the famine up to the 16 Rising, they were able to conquer tyranny because of that fire, and it lives on here today.
Can I just say, I mean, is it bad for me to not interject, but dwell on what he said there? I often think about, look at that still there, by the way, on screen. That's great looking, isn't it? And I'm not even that learned on Irish history, to be honest. I know what sort of most people know. I have the rough idea. I know a few bits and pieces. But whether it's Irish history, and to be honest, it's a lot of people's history, but certainly ours, this idea that, and I've thought about this a lot in the last year or so, the idea that perhaps the baseline, the default of human civilization, or let's call it humanity, I don't know, the default of the human species is sort of slavery, in a sense that left unchecked, left unguarded, or fought against, or protected and nourished, or whatever, that the default, let's say, the entropy direction, let's say, is always sliding towards slavery, ultimately. That you have powerful people, entities, groups, whatever, who accumulate masses of resources and sort of turn the majority of people into farm animal slaves, basically, and exploit them and basically sort of juice, when you put cut an orange in half in one of those sort of old-fashioned manual juicers, right? That they actually juice people for their life's worth. So what you can, by the way, tell me in the chat if the interjections are not welcome, but the idea that you can effectively, there's a value transfer where if you can take someone who otherwise might have a life of more leisure time, more familial community connections, abundance, freedom in the literal sense, freedom to, if you think of wealth, let's say, as a combination of power to influence things, time, comfort, and choices, the ability to make choices, and the ability in this day and age to even have children, something as primal as that. And even a rat knows to have children and has an imperative to do so. A rat, a elephant, whatever, any animal, an insect. That's how integral it is to be a living creature, right? A sentient, a conscious creature. you could actually juice even that, all sorts of stuff. That freedom and that ease and abundance and security is another important word there. That all of that which exists within a person, within a community, a neighborhood, or whatever, that some sort of shareholder entity or mad king or whatever, some sort of tyrant could in theory organize a system or a set of conditions whereby that value, all of those lovely things effectively, could be juiced out of people individually and as a mass, and that the value of those things could be sort of transferred, the value of their time, their labor, all sorts of even more slightly abstract things could be juiced and sort of funneled into a big massive vat of juice that the mad king or the mad system or the shareholders or whatever, and that they could have loads of that for themselves. Sort of, this is like, I say it in like childish language because it's sort of the most true understanding of these things without getting into jargon and technical details or whatever. That's the fundamental of it, that there is a default of society or systems or whatever where, yeah, you will just have people, you know, turned into these juicing units to extract value from them and hoard it among a small, wealthy, powerful elite who then use the sort of, in order to justify this, create a whole system of oppression and censorship and rule that is sort of built to uphold that and deepen it and entrench it further and further and further. And what I'm talking about with the entropy aspect is that there's sort of no bump stop or like sort of a barrier at the end of this slide, where the slide actually can go down right to the most base, crass, slave oriented level. And I don't think, I'm not sure if people currently, contemporary society, realize that even as things worsen in front of our faces and start to more resemble tyrannical realities of times gone by, centuries gone by, we don't sort of believe that it could be true. And the reality is that actually that's your baseline, and you actually have to fight tooth and nail in a way against that tendency. And left unchecked, you will go there. And believe me, for all our Netflix and TikTok and all that, it does feel like we're going there. I think a lot of Irish people can sense that is, or people all over the place can sense that that's kind of what's not so slowly happening before our very eyes. And it feels like we're powerless to resist it. It feels like we were raised in I was anyway, raised in the 90s, or anyone raised after World War II, this whole idea that we could never be in that. It could never get to that. Whatever the manifestation, things could never get to that general condition. You know, that would never really happen. That level of tyranny, that level of enslavement, like, and that's where the boomers kind of come in. After World War II, it was like, oh, that's over now. And then the 1990s and after the Cold War and stuff, there's just this idea that there was a temporary period of abundance for the masses, a middle class, and this idea of liberal freedom and stuff like democracy or whatever, that people thought there was some exception, this like a permanent exception that was sort of baked in now forevermore or something. Whereas in reality, that's actually a very exceptional state of affairs, and it does have a rewind feature as well. You can just go back to that. So there's so much wisdom and so much profundity to be had, more maybe than any other country, the poetic nature of the ideological commitment and all of that within Irish nationalism specifically. And I don't just say that because I'm Irish. I think that's an objective thing. So that's the, you know, when someone like Councillor Patrick Quinlan or anyone else starts quoting Pearse and starts quoting Wolfe Tone and all, you know, it's not just empty, you know, sort of flag waving or whatever. It's actually, to me, I find it all very profound. And
Ireland's future soul. But we have, for the vast majority of our people, lost that spark. We have to ask ourselves, what rules the Irish people now? It's an abrupt one. It's money, it's cold, and it's ruthless. It's claimed our altars. It has twisted our dreams to greed, power, despair. What's filling the void of the forsaken faith? It's not honour anymore, but it's an insatiable greed that steers our nation. The elites, the votes overflow, yet they force a soulless career. Borders erased, mass immigration for cheap labour, a globalist nightmare. 119,200 non-nationals flooded our land last year. Tens of thousands of Irish people were exiled from their birthright. That goal spins in the sea. Merely Lou McDonald, and we need a fair system. Harris, we're delivering efficiency, he says. Micheál Martin will manage the pressure. It's all deceit. Their NGOs are flush with state gold. They're herding strangers into Ireland with no scrutiny, with no care, and they are preying on our kindness. I say it's time we put it back.
I will say I always knew Patrick Quinlan had the goods many years ago. You know, I don't know if I put it on record, but I always did. I have to congratulate him there. That's pretty good. And coming into his own more, put in the grassroots work in his community, got elected, able to do the knocking on doors, getting people sorted out for housing and all the rest of it, and speak to the crowd. It is what it is. I don't mean to be a, ass kisser here, but it's just a fact. The other thing too is that this talk about, the money elite, the money powered, the sort of system overall. I'm very glad that rhetoric has sort of gotten out there. People are using it, because the whole idea that you just talk about immigration, of course, immigration is central to everything I talk about, but I like the idea that instead of it just being, oh, well, there's this kind of foreign element in our country, and it's, everything that comes, alienation, housing pressure or whatever, but a deeper understanding of the system in general, which is the thing that the so-called left have always been pretty good on. Their critiques of the system are always very interesting. You listen to some Navarra media, that kind of stuff. I actually will enjoy listening to that sometimes more than just someone on the right bleating on about just immigration on its own, absent of the more holistic critique. And the right, let's say, is, and especially the Irish right, is getting very, very good at that. It's sort of like the Gary Stevenson, Gary's Economics. You probably all have seen that stuff. That sort of critique. What he's missing is an intentional avoidance of the immigration question. He actually punts on it or whatever. And his critique is fairly good. The financial thing, the destruction of the middle class, the fact that we're going to move into a situation, even though we don't believe it can be true, that the West will become more like Nigeria or India or something, a mega rich small elite, and the rest, 80-90% of everybody else, a poor depth grovelers, basically, like in India, like Slumdog Millionaire. Like, if you don't think that can and will happen, you're sorely mistaken. There's no, call it white privilege, right? Or whatever, right? This even because right-wingers love to say that, that's a woke thing or whatever, but in a way, in an ironic sense, there's this idea that in the West, post-World War II reality, that we just don't believe that somehow, because we are in the West, that couldn't happen to us. We couldn't get drawn into such a wicked sort of tyranny. Because, if you go to India, you go to Calcutta, you see it, you just think this is evil, basically, what's going on. Like, this is horrific. But it would never happen back home. We're too democratic. We have too much of a say, or no, like, wait and see type of thing, unless we change it. But I'm glad to see that that's coming in. I don't know what else I was going to say, so I'll just play it. I will say now, just get them out. Get them out is great too, because obviously it's get them out. Get those fake asylum seeker, fake passport, migrant men, whatever. Get them out of this hotel, right? We saw that first at East Wall, that chanted into the Bord Gáis building. But what I love about that too, I'm not Jesuit, right? I'm an ordinary Catholic person, but I do like my rhetoric, right? And as a rhetorical specialist, I love get them out, because it also refers to the elite, the system, the structures that are in place, the NGO lackeys, the politician lackeys, you name it. it's there. You can take it as a whole. The get them out is a general thing, as well as obviously about the specific, mass immigration and all that. That's what I love about that chant. Get them out. Get them out. Them. You can take it whatever way. You can take it for what you want, and out, you can take it for what you want. I love that.
See that? The nationalist is being branded as villain. They're being shunned. They're being suppressed for fear of exile. Meanwhile, they're trafficking humanity like cargo. It's not mercy. It's a land grab. Look at the wreckage. Look at iPads, a multi-billion euro swindle, housing 32,000 foreigners while our own sleep up on the streets. Rents are extortionate, are crushing hope. Estates like Adamstown, near 80% are being snatched up by foreign nationals and vulture funds. Homes are €500,000. Rents are $2.5 grand. Where's the youth? They're being locked out. I say no more.
This is epic. This is great.
The Irish on the waiting lists for the local authorities. We all see it with our eyes. We all know what's going on there, and it's not our people getting the house. Suicide, drug overdose, the hunt in the city. A once proud and prosperous people are now being shadowed by despair. Is it our legacy? Are we a shattered nation? Are our values being battered for selfish gain? Is this the tale of our ancestors, of what they foretold, that their sacrifices would be betrayed by a den of traitors inside Darlene? The migration pact that they so conveniently forced upon us, and if we don't take it, we have to pay €20 grand in fines. I'll pay the fines now, but I don't want them. They're out chanting Ireland for all. It's a lie. Because a nation for all is a nation for nothing, and Ireland belongs to the Irish people.
It's the clue's in the name, Ireland for the Irish. I love all these slogans because they're slogans, sure, but they're profound as well. Ireland for the Irish. We've all heard it a million times. We're almost numb to it in a way, right? But Ireland for the Irish, not Jamaica for the Irish, right? Ireland for the Irish. If it's not for the Irish, it's not Ireland. It's a piece of land on the Atlantic Ocean. The only trouble is our ancestors' bones are buried here. Like you said, they meant it for us. But it's funny, isn't it? The sort of the obviousness of it. Ireland is for the Irish.
Now, I didn't want to get you off on too much of a bad start. There is hope. Because Ireland fights. Killarney, Carlow, Lisdoonvarna, Newtown, Mount Kennedy, Rosscraig, Ballinrobe, Ballyoke, Athlone, Clonmel, Cool, East Wall, Santry, Outterard, Buncrannon, Rosslare, Braes, Pallet, Gundrope, Lismore, Thornall, Carnew, Carl, from Q-Till to Q-Lock, from Ballina to Ballymun.
Yes.
The list blazes on.
Yeah, that's class. And I said that I said that myself back in the day. Some people would be like despairing after the likes of Newtown, Mount Kennedy. They put in a big fight. They got beaten down by the guards. The migrants went in anyway. A literal full-on plantation barracks. We all saw that. But the value of that at the time, I thought, well, no, it wasn't for nothing. Of course it wasn't for nothing, because every Irish person in Newtown, Mount Kennedy, to use old parlance, is permanently red-pilled, right? And I'm sure many of them were there in Dublin at this event, and they're deeply, deeply so-called red-pilled, made aware of these things and made radicalized, I don't know, committed to the ideas of this thing, as opposed to it being abstract and you're just watching X Factor and scrolling TikTok. No, now it's personal to you. Now you follow Patrick Quinlan, you follow Conor McGregor's Odyssey, you've blah blah blah, all the streamers and the blah, all this stuff, right? You follow it all. You're reading about the history. You're reading about the sort of the lies baked into you. You know, it is a change of consciousness, basically, in a sense. And they go through that, and you might think, okay, that's Newtown, Mount Kennedy, however many few thousand people live there. Yeah, sure, but what about Rosscray? What about Lisdoonvarna? What about Carrickmacross? You name it. Look, over time, these start to come together. The list, he had a long list there. I'm sure you could add on a few more. Suddenly you have dozens and hundreds of places. I mean, at a certain point, you're kind of talking about the whole country there. So it might be hard to, like, I'm going to do a live stream presentation of why mass immigration and the theory of anti-racism is actually by blah, blah, blah. You know, go through all, like, deconstruct everything. What, you're going to send that in a DVD to every house in Ireland, get them to sit down and watch it? They're not going to latch onto that, even if it's true and it's relevant. You know, when it happens to them, and critically at the moment when it happens to them, you're there, you're informing them, you are supporting them, and they find in you that you agree with them and that you predicted everything that was going to happen to them, and you've been on this rodeo a million times before and the rest of it. And they see the media turn on them. They see the NGOs. So they're given basically a crash course, and then you scale that up, and you end up with like a mass awakening, basically. That's how I've always believed these things could attain a sort of critical mass. Really, in my mind, when I first saw the asylum thing, I thought this is almost the only way. It's through harsh experience and a learning curve. Through that sort of crucible comes mass awakening, and eventually it sort of coagulates into one mass, one Ireland, basically. So I think we're getting there.
In English, in 2023, they pitched tents against an IPAS centre. In 2024, they marched with a banner that said plantation pushers out. There was no IPAS centre in English. Quinlan stopped it dead in its tracks. In the likes of Quinlan, Newtown, Mount Kennedy and Rosscray, riot cops, brutal guarding, battered peaceful protesters to force those centres through, but they failed. In Quinlan, they failed for a reason. Go look at it. And then as we're coming past the GPO, there's a counter protest against this nationalist rally. It's not about compassion, it's about control. An elite plot to smear and suppress Irish heart, daring to say no more. What are we telling them? No more! No more!
Just a word on Sinn Féin, right? I could go on about the Sinn Féin question, and I'll try not to, but you know, there's an element where I tried to be sympathetic to them all throughout the years. I tried to reach out to them, tried to get them to understand, tried to say, listen, if you're even nominally quiet on the real nationalists, or if you're nudge supportive, something like that, that'll do. I don't expect mad things out of you. You're trying to mainstream yourselves, but like, don't become a declared enemy, you know, and that'll do maybe, right? Because there are common people, like Sinn Féin were traditionally the party of sort of the people, we'll say. And I thought, well, they could be in a position to be a low-key fellow traveller, something like that. I felt very generous. And even after they failed that, and the GB Newses and the Ezra Levants, as people like him were there last weekend as well, but as these kind of vultures are sort of circling around trying to like sort of entryist their way into this thing, use it for their own ends, you see a lot of that, you know, and they were focusing on the Sinn Féin or traders chants and all that. And I was saying, and not popular in these kind of live streams to my own audience, not exactly a convenient thing for me to be saying, but I felt like it was true. There's an element of a little bit of outside, like when the critics would say that this is an outside plot using the right wing in Ireland or the nationalists in Ireland to try and like split Sinn Féin or something like that. I was kind of saying that's 95% bullshit, but there's a little bit of truth in it. You know what I mean? To some extent, they remain traitors. They are. But there is an element of opportunists sort of taking advantage of that as well a little bit. And that almost makes me slightly less unsympathetic to Sinn Féin, if that makes sense. in a way. So, but when I saw them endorse this counter protest, to me that's, and I've been against Sinn Féin overall for years for obvious reasons, or like against them being what they are, globalist and the rest of it. But what shred of sort of strained remaining slight good feeling to elements of Sinn Féin or whatever that I have, and there are good members still, of course, and followers of Sinn Féin, but as an institution, let's say, what remained is gone. Like, and I'll tell you why, is because back when the old days, let's say, of the last decade, where I say, oh, it was a niche thing, it was underground, it was radical, it was finding itself, it was being politically incorrect for the sake of it, it was being it was forced underground, and it was acting like it was forced underground. Maybe Sinn Féin would say, well, these kind of like on and on and on sort of hardcore, like alt-right sort of nationalism, focusing on all, you know, some of that is in this day and age feels crass, or you know, whatever. I could argue then it's an underground, what's the word, saucy movement, you know what I mean? It's acting that way. Maybe they could, in their liberal naivety, say, oh, well, that's not a brand we want to associate with, they're actually sort of crass, they're this or that. But what you had here was not a diluted, not a sacrifice, not a bastardized march or speeches, as we can see with Patrick, but Councillor Patrick. But you had, it's like, what more could you want? Like I say, it's not bastardized, but it's pretty like peaceful and general. We want a better Ireland. We want to put an end to some of these policies, and mass immigration, kind of among others, that we're not allowed to talk about and we're suppressed on, and the government are out of control, and la la la. It's very respectable, you know what I mean? It's a bunch of people waving Irish flags. There's a lot, everything I've said up until now about how normal and decent and respectable and everything that it was, you know, what more could Sinn Féin want? Not in order for them to endorse it wholeheartedly, but to say, at the bare minimum, we're not going to join the peanut gallery, the opposition, the counter protesters on this one. We're going to say that we don't endorse it. Mary Lou's not going to be getting up having a hug with Patrick Quinlan, but Councillor Patrick Quinlan, but you know, we're going to certainly at the bare minimum sit this one out. We're not joining the NGOs, the institutional entities, the Paul Murphys, the rest of it. We're not doing that. You know, nah, this is too normal. It's too broad. It's too much of a mass movement. We're not going to stand there in front of 10,000 ordinary Irish people who just want to stop all of this, right? And declare opposition to them on the street as part of a small ragtag group of weirdos. But they did, and if there was any sense within that party, even just selfishly, like for their own selfish ends, someone would have said, yeah, we're going to sit it out. We're just going to tell Paul Murphy and tell the NGOs and tell the Queers for Jamaica or whatever, we're going to tell them we're not, actually. We're making a little first foray to say, no, we're not doing it. But they didn't, and that's the end of that, as far as I'm concerned. And I was too lenient, and I was too devil's advocate, you could say. But that's the end of it for me. They're just a complete busted flush. They're gone. Fuck them.
Calling us hateful, they're tyrants. It's a ploy to kill our voice. They fear not chaos, but our awakening. A people united, refusing to be guilty, killed, or erased. I fought this rock. I've secured homes for Irish families. I stood with the mammies of ladies well at the very beginning of this, against all of this. I tried to floor a motion against Thornton Hall. And what did the Labour Mayor turn it? Oh, well, Thornton Hall's not on the agenda anymore. So even if it was on the menu, he wouldn't be having it. Last December, I demanded that Fingal County Council let us know what percentage of the list is for the national. It was 2011. It was in 2011. It was 51%. I forced the vote. The transparency, the misinformation, all liars, all 29 of them voted against it. I wonder why.
Interjection. You know, Councillor Patrick Quinlan's role within it's a Fingal, is it county council, whatever it is, the council he's in, which is sort of live streamed or taped, we all get to see it, has been very important, because I've never seen that before. We have a nationalist who isn't sort of dubious or any of that. Patrick's been doing this for a long time. He's pretty unabashed in his views. He's a proper nationalist, right? And so to see someone like him in there, in the norm, the mainstream, the belly of the beast of the institution, to be in there and sort of having to sit in a room with them and them have to sit in a room with him, and to see how the democracy plays out, it's sort of a low level, because it's, you know, a local council. It's a low level microcosm of what we see with Romania. Forget his name. The guy who ran for president there and who was barred from running basically for like made up reasons, and with Marine Le Pen with her spurious kind of charge being, you know, banned from the elections, the rest of it, and possibly will happen to AFD as well, is that the big lie about liberal democracy, I think especially so in Europe as a post-World War II colony or whatever, is that we'll put up all the hurdles in front of you, the Antifa, the NGOs, the media, the firing you from your job if you have that view. I mean, how can you have free speech? How can you have democratic elections if you're actually not allowed a fair shake in equal accord to everyone else to say your piece and to advocate for your position and all of that? If you're facing basically a bunch of booby traps and like, pitfalls, also, like, how are you meant to do that? And then the media machine blaring the opposite and demonizing you 24/7 into people's homes, etc. Social media censorship, you name it. All of that stuff, the politics of personal destruction, etc. Quinlan Georgescu or something like that, the Callan, whatever, Romanian fella. I'm just reading the chat there. Someone's letting me know. But with all of that, the sort of the punchline of all of that is that they put this hurdle in front of you, which is basically insurmountable. But if you do the Excalibur, if you pull the sword out, if you sort of overcome it, Frodo with the ring, you've gotten there to the fiery chasm, and it was impossible. You defied all the odds, and you got there fair and square, more than fair and square. You know what I mean? Way more than fair and square. For you to get there was a massive triumph to even have a chance, and you got there, and now the fair shake and the public actually, in spite of it all, still vote you in. And that's years, decades of clawing with your fingernails to get to that point. You get to that point, they yank it and they go, no, it was never real, right? It was bullshit all along. If you get to the finish line, then we will just shoot you. We'll move the finish line away. We'll arrest you, right? We'll cancel the election. We'll nullify your election. This kind of stuff. That reveals the big lie. It's like, okay, so it's all bullshit. So basically all the people who do get elected, those are all fake as well, because they were elected because they were allowed to be elected, basically, and they were favored and all of that. So the whole thing is just fake. It's worse than, if you're interested in like, tyranny and liberalism and all that, China is far more democratic, ultimately. And like, it might have a different system, it might have a authoritarian leader figure, but ultimately it reflects the views of its people better, because ours doesn't reflect ours, and the system that is meant to make an excuse for that, well, you do have a fair say and a fair vote, actually you don't. Anyway, I don't want to belabor it. That whole idea, you see that play out in a microcosm in the council with Patrick Quinlan. The amount of hurdles, the hostility, all these shills, all these horrible worms of people, right? There was one there where there was some council assignment. It seemed like a pretty sort of run-of-the-mill, basic, boring almost thing. Something, I'm just making this up, right? And this is my understanding of it. Something like, you imagine it's like, we're going to have a council for lampposts that are faulty. I don't know how councils work, but let's say one councillor is going to take that committee assignment for faulty lampposts. They're going to liaise with the ESB, and they're going to liaise with the community, and they're going to gather it all up as an elected representative, and they're going to kind of pursue that. Imagine something as sort of apolitical, whatever this is. That I believe it was something along those general lines, and it was up for assignment. So the guy listed it, and people are there with their chins on their fist, sitting down, bored, like you're at a boring lecture in college, half falling. Everyone's checked out, and the guy, the MC, whatever you call him, right? The main guy, the head chair, right? There we go, MC. The chair signs this boring thing. Barely anyone was even listening, and he says, "Who wants this one? Anybody want it?" And nobody puts up their hand. Just dead silence in the room, boredom, apathy. And then Councillor Patrick Quinlan says, after like 10 seconds of nobody biting, he says, "I'll take it." Now, you know, from college or school, when that situation happens, nobody wants it, nobody's interested. So whoever puts their hand up and says, "I'll take it," it's fair game. It's yours now, obviously, because you evidently didn't want it. And suddenly the chair gets all funny, and he says, "Oh, no, we'll put it to vote." And these other hands go up and they go, "Actually, I'll take it." And these shill other councillors, who are like good boys, good little traitors, and they put it to a vote among the council, and the entire council vote for one of the other guys to get it, which is just, you know, I mean, it's such, in a sense, childish school kind of type of, reminiscent of school type of thing. But it's like, okay, so he's not meant to be there. He wasn't meant to be, even though he was elected legitimately by the people, he's there. You're trying to do everything within your power to bar him from even having sort of boring assignments or whatever. You're basically trying to isolate and blackball him out of your little system. It's a small thing, but to me, it reminds me of like the Romanian presidential candidate being barred. It's like the same thing. It's like, okay, so this is all bullshit, obviously. Anyway, that was a tangent. But Patrick had, you see that, and it's like, so you could say, well, what's the point? What's the point in running for elections? What's the point in doing this and that? Well, yeah, you're not going to change things overnight. Oh, well, even if you get in, they blackball you. Yeah, but we all see that it discredits the system even more. It's like, it's definitely more productive and useful than like taking your ball and going home. It makes a stride. It delegitimizes the whole system. For sure. Even for me, I didn't realize it all. And I kind of pay attention to politics. Like, I didn't realize how rotten it was from the inside out, and we see it on camera.
They sold land, public land, air land, oil land to foreigners at half its fucking market value. A discount for the plantation.
Having a good time.
The fight lives in you. Gather in your towns, meet in the halls, share the stories, rally behind your local representatives like me, and if you haven't got one, I suggest you seriously start thinking about being. I didn't think I'd be there delivering this speech. I'm just Paddy from Portland, I'm just doing it because I have to. Our work is not done. Do not leave this place and think the work is done. It has just begun. What of the 107,000 Ukrainians here in March? McDonald, you have to differentiate between who wishes to go home and those who wish to stay. Spineless. Harrison Martin are silent on the post-war plans. Nobody says send them back. What do we say?
Yes.
Hope is built, housing estates for Ukrainians are rising all over the place while ours are on the streets. iPass housing 32,000 partners while our Irish starve on the street. It's not kindness, it's surrender. We are not the broken nation that they wish us to be. Our patriot dead, the heroes of the famine, the heroes of 1916 faced chains, starvation, their hearts blazed for Ireland. They triumphed, and so shall we. The National Party stands unbowed. Ireland belongs to the Irish people. We must start a policy of mass re-migration. What's our vision for Ireland? It's an Ireland reborn, an Ireland united, and an Ireland that is free. No EU chains, no globalist laws, a nationalist stronghold, not an EU migration hub. 119,000 in 1 year? Never again. Never again. We'll shut the borders. We'll house the people. We'll rekindle our ancestors' divine fire. Ireland won't bow. We will rise. Resilient Ireland is ours. They think we're defeated. They think we can be bullied, harassed, intimidated, or shunned. They think Irish nationalism is dead in the water, but I have something to ask you. Is your heart still beating? Because as long as your heart is still beating, Ireland lives and there's still hope.
Class. Oh, look at that. I think your man, yeah. I think that was Mr. Sutcliffe. I'm not sure, but that's good stuff. That was nice camaraderie there at the end. Yeah, look, I'm inspired by that. It's also doable, you know. Close the borders, house the people, all that. You know, it's like, when you think about it, it's like, it's so doable. I could go on, but like with modern technology, surplus value, all the rest of it, just a bit of a common sense rule, like Singapore, China, you name it. I use those examples. Like just basically yes, an ideologically nationalist, but also just technocratically sort of correct, in a sense, view of things from a nationalist ideological perspective. It wouldn't even be like some big complicated thing at this day and age, you know. The solutions are just low-hanging fruit. It's you don't have to reinvent some sort of astrophysics here. It's really it takes work to not have these things just. It takes effort to have these things not just kind of work. You know what I mean? Build enough houses, accord supply with demand, have a national territory that's in relationship to its people and inhabitants, a closed, semi-closed system, ecosystem for a certain set of people, generally speaking, and build houses, set up infrastructure, get it to run, secure energy, foreign policy, defense, statecraft. Like, it really shouldn't be that complicated at all, which is why I say, some people say, this is not my speech here, sorry, but some people say it's not a housing crisis, it's an immigration crisis. And I sometimes say it's not a housing crisis, it's not an immigration crisis, it's a political crisis. Because if you had people in charge, whether it's a council like in Iran or something like that, whether it's a king or a dictator or whatever, or it's just democracy in its true form, where you seek what the people want, you put it up for election. Like, you put up for election, do you want to end mass immigrations, extremely sort of start restricting it, gradually taper it off, get rid of it, go back to 1998? Do you want to do that, or do you want to keep going as is? That'd be a pretty fair referendum. We know that it would be a landslide. So it doesn't have to be a king. It doesn't have to be, but either way, that the politics reflects the will of the people, and natural inheritance of a demos, a territory. Under that rubric, under that system, then the immigration so-called crisis would just melt away overnight, and thus the housing crisis would melt away overnight. So it begins with we can't solve the housing crisis, to take that as an example. You can't solve the housing crisis. It's not going to be solved, because the people who have sovereignty and rule over the country, sort of whoever they are or whatever it is, those people don't want to solve it. They want to make it worse. So, of course, how are you going to solve the immigration crisis or the housing crisis when that's your status quo? You obviously can't, because it's just obvious, right? You can't. The crisis is, well, yes, we're run by people who sort of hate us and who just want to farm us out and farm all the immigrants out too as well. And it's just not the right system. It's not working. It's not fair. It's not working. It's not representative. And it's actually, I won't get into this, but it's caving in on itself. Maybe that's a stream for another night. That's what it is. It's a political crisis. I think Patrick kind of got at that there a bit, Councillor Patrick Quinlan. Let's get on to Councillor Gavin Pepper, and then I'll wrap it up. I will. That's all I want to do here, is watch this speech and go home. Go home. I am home, but you know what I mean. There was a bit of a blunder there. Go to bed is what I meant.
How is everybody?
By the way, this is Rob Halliday. Not overly familiar. Recognize the name. I don't know if he recorded this. It's just on this Twitter account. But look at the quality of that. Just as a recording. Look at the quality of that. Whatever a Steadicam lens, I don't know about that stuff, but it's good quality, isn't it? That looks like a movie. It looks like something at Sundance Film Festival. Looks like an indie movie.
That's the best looking flag in the world, would you agree? Look at, we all are here. We're all here today because we're sick of the government treating us like crap. It's as simple as that. We had enough of the vulture funds in the country that can go. People are struggling with their bills, their rents, their mortgages. People can't get by in this country anymore. And we've had enough of it, and the people in Leicester House are just not listening. The fact of the matter is, we're bringing in thousands of people and putting them up in hotels while our own people are being left to rot. Right?
See, here's the thing, right? I don't want to get off on a big ideological thing or whatever. What he's saying here is pretty straightforward. But I'm being like the speech critic, or not critic, but analyst here. You know, when you think about what he just said, they're putting up tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in hotels while our own people rot. You know, if you're really familiar with that stuff, you're going, yeah, I know. We all know that now. But think about it and these videos, of course, go around WhatsApp groups and they go around the place. You could tomorrow, if you haven't, send it on and go, I saw this thing. I don't know much about it, but what do you think? You can send it on. Like, what Irish person? You think of the crazed Antifa, you think of the Late Late Show, Mary McAleese going on. Immigration is no issue. The far right, blah, blah, blah. We know what the institutions say. We know what the media says. It's very disconnected. But think of an average person. They don't have a dog in the fight really at all, right? Conjure up this hypothetical person in your mind. I'm sure you know many of them. And if they heard just that much, we're 20 seconds into a speech, right? They hear just that much. If you're familiar with it, it's kind of milquetoast. But if you're not familiar with it, it's actually a major breath of fresh air. How often do you hear that on the Late Late Show? I mean, never, right? Bizarre absence of anything like that. And then think about that run-of-the-mill, no dog in the fight person listening to it. How could they possibly? So they're not online, they're not ideologues, right wing. They're just neutral. We've gotten to a point in Ireland where they would have to go, well, yeah, that's true. And actually, it's quite refreshing to hear that, because I never hear it on the Late Late Show. When I get in the van in the morning, I turn on the radio and I hear, oh, spicy, whatever, hot chicken rolls, right? Blah, blah, blah. Liverpool versus Man United. Trade deals in Europe or something. I never hear the thing that I know is obvious. I see it all the time. I see what's going on around me. We are given hotels. Every Irish person knows that, by the way, now. You know, we take that for granted. 5 years ago, it was happening to a smaller scale. But actually, most people didn't know about it. I was talking about it. I didn't have a big megaphone. Was I very effective? I don't know. But either way, and it hadn't gotten as bad yet. You know, some people knew about it, but it wasn't some mass, universally understood thing. But now every Irish person, I would say without exception, knows that we are bringing in tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, but tens of thousands, and putting them in hotels and giving them houses and all the rest. We've all seen it. Everyone's seen it. Not just me, not just you watching this, but the so-called normies. Everyone's seen it. Everyone knows it. And yet there's this disconnect that you turn on the telly and it's not there. So then they see Gavin Pepper's speech and he's saying this thing, which to us, we know, but to them, they're like going, the basics are important is what I'm trying to say. And to have it spoken in front of 10,000 people legitimizes it. Worth far more than me saying it into a camera now, right? To a niche audience online at whatever time of the night it is. That matters. That matters that people are just saying over and over again, reiterating the basics and the obvious injustices. So that's my take so far. I'll just let it play.
We've over 15,500 people in emergency accommodation. They come first. Our country is so bad that a mother had to go all the way up to Belfast to give birth to a child. We've had enough of this in Ireland. And the thing is, right, you need to give a shout out to the people that work tirelessly. The people from the Says No movement who stand outside the buildings. All my videos and stuff that I do, I wouldn't be able to do it without Valerie Murphy if she wasn't there. So give Val a shout out. And listen, this is only the start of this. There's thousands of people here, but what's important is you need to make sure your children are registered to vote in the elections, in the leaving cert when they do it. So they can vote the chancellors out of the door. Because it'll never change. The fact of the matter is, we don't need big posh people to come on and represent the working class. Represent the working class ourselves. We are the working class of the flats. Be proud to be Irish and never be afraid to speak out. Remember, the politicians in the Dáil, they don't care about you. So call them out on the street when you see them. At the end of the day, you can feed your kids and look after your kids. And the sort of person I am, I represent the working class. I'm an independent. I will never support cuts to people on welfare or people struggling on low wages. We need to look after them. They're their people.
That's solid, because not long ago, whatever right-wing nationalist, these terms, nationalist is good, but right-wing is dubious. Not long ago, if you had a right-wing fake shill type of person on telly, right, I won't name names, but this kind of fake William F. Buckley, if you're familiar with him, American old commentator from the 60s and 70s, and the Reaganism, Thatcherism and all that was kind of welded onto whatever any sort of right-wingish sort of anti-PC, whatever it is, movement. This whole idea that you have to support big businesses by cutting their taxes, and we don't want to be socialist, oh no, you're Karl Marx, all this kind of stuff, kind of bonding this kind of right-wing coalition together that felt like it was just representing billionaires and shareholders and all the rest of it, Thatcherism basically. Toxic, I don't agree with it. Looks bad across the board. It's bad, and he's cutting straight through that there. I'm sure those people wouldn't like hearing that, and that's what I want. That I want all the wrong people to hear that and go, oof, this is not our rhetoric. It's like, yeah, no, it isn't, and it's not. This isn't your movement. We actually do support the working class. We don't support cutting benefits and welfare and all this kind of stuff, and also just in general, even through tax relief should go, because it's not all about just benefits. Tax relief should go to the someone who's on 50 grand a year or whatever shouldn't be disproportionately taxed compared to extremely rich people who don't pay tax, and unrealized capital gains, all this kind of stuff, right? So I agree with the rhetoric.
What's mental representation. Irish people come first in our own country.
You know, like people on disability and stuff like that. I'm glad that he's talking about these kind of things, because that's important too. It's not just all talking about the machine, the regime, the big banks, and all that stuff. I always talk about that stuff. That's my thing. But talking about that on the ground level situation for people, let's say at the bottom or whatever, and who could be more at the bottom than someone who's on disability and genuinely disabled, right? You know, I looked into it there a while back, and it's like you have people who are like fairly severely disabled. They call it a love tax, where if you're that disabled person and you are married to or living with or cohabiting or whatever with someone who's on, like, I don't know what the cutoff, but it could be like 40 grand or something. It could be even less if I'm not mistaken, but it's not high, right? If you're married to them and they're above that margin, then you can't get benefits, you can't get disability or whatever. And at that point, you're living in a house, cohabitating, or a spouse with a person who ultimately you are, for all the love in the world, a burden on. So you could, if you're on your own, you could get your meager enough disability payment. But the moment so if you're on your own, you're already in pain, you're already disabled, your mobility is lost, that's bad enough. You've already gotten a bad enough hand in life, the worst hand in a sense possible, right? You're physically disabled and in pain. But you'll get your meager payment if you're on your own. But if you find love or connection with someone, right, a spouse, then they take it away from you and they make them pay for it, whatever it is. You get 200 and something a week or something. They make them pay it, so that you're, of course, a sort of sense of self worthlessness and sense of burdenship, if that's a word, sets in for the disabled person. But of course, you say, oh, well, a good spouse would never think this way. But of course, human beings are human beings. Maybe over time, resentment could creep in for the other one, right? Not only do I have a spouse who is immobile, who I have to help, who is down in the dumps a lot, maybe because your physical health affects your mental health and all that, but I have to pay for their everything. And you know, if you're on 40 grand in a house, you're already struggling big time, right? Just on your own. But now you have to support a whole other human being. It's just not tenable. And you can see how they say poverty comes in the door, love goes up the chimney. Think of how diabolical a situation that is. And they do that. They cut like that. And they say the country's awash with money, and there's shadow banking, and people who are very rich don't pay tax, and they hoover up value from their capital assets and all the rest of it, you know. And then you, for a few scaldy 200 quid or something a week, you say, oh, well, your spouse who is on 39 grand is above the threshold, even though it barely would pay for shopping or whatever. It's when we're meant to be, we're in such a rich country, and the rest of it is vile. So when people say, oh, all the benefits people, never mind them, they're, you know, it's like, it's actually very cruel. It's very cruel for the people who are on benefits in many cases. And then it's very cruel, of course, for people who are above these thresholds and stuff like that. It's a very petty system when it comes down to those kind of margins, and it's horrible. It's disgusting. So I'm glad people like Gavin are talking about it. Anyway.
It's time for mass deportation. The traitors in Sinn Féin do not care. Get them out! Everybody, listen, never be afraid to speak out. Never back down. Always stand up. This is about our families' futures and our kids being able to buy and rent a house. This is about the Irish people. And it's time to put the Irish people first. Because as I always say, who does Ireland belong to? This is our country and it belongs to us. And the people in the dog are to get it through a skull. Because there's thousands of people here today. They send a message. Ireland belongs to the Irish. God bless everybody.
There we go. So of course the message isn't lost, right? Some people might say, "Oh well, if you're being watering it down to get this mass appeal or whatever." Look, Ireland belongs to the Irish is a fairly straightforward message. Like I said a while ago, the clue is in the name; it's self-contained. So everybody's saying that, people from different perspective, backgrounds, and everything. Everybody's still saying it. It's his closing line basically. So the message is fairly clear, undiluted, to be honest. Anyway, there might be one more little thing I want to.
Oh, and just another thing. I support mass deportation, but we want all our nurses and doctors in Australia to come home. Send them home to us. Nurses and doctors in Australia. I support mass deportation. Oh, and just another thing. I support mass deportation, but we want all our nurses and doctors in Australia to come home.
I thought for a second he might have said, "I don't support mass deportations," but I think he said, "I do support mass deportations." I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. The nurses in Australia, what they're saying, give us a reason to come home, man. That was a great speech. You know, Councillor Gavin Pepper puts the work in. You really have to hand it to him as well. Just like Councillor Patrick Quinlan on the ground, that type of thing. I have to say fair play. Okay, so just one. Yeah, no, I could go on, but I won't. I had a good friend of mine. I spoke earlier about this small group of people I met in the underground days back in like 2016 or whatever. Well, there was someone who wasn't at that particular thing, but they were part of that sort of group chat back in the real underground days. And if she's watching, she'll know who she is, right? Obviously, or if she sees it after. But I actually met her last weekend, and we were chatting away, and she very politely said to me, you know, you're good at your streams and all that stuff, but maybe just leave it to pick a few subjects, stick with it, and then just like don't go on. You know what I mean? And I do have a tendency to. And she was brave enough to just put it to me straight like that. So I'm going to listen to her and leave it at that. So yeah, that was the demonstration in Dublin. I think a great success, very good. I am pleased to sort of be part of this whole kind of thing, and I think it bodes well for the future. In a sense, not that big a deal. Few people get together, but I think I've already spoken. I think I've already made the argument for why it actually carries a lot of significance. I will say fair play to everyone who attended, obviously, but also fair play to the speakers, councillors Gavin and Patrick, and all of the rest of the people there. You know, it's not easy to, I said this as well about Conor McGregor recently, it's not easy to show up. You know, you see a speech like that and it's kind of like watching TV, but it's actually not easy to be in the right mood, to show up, to consistently be there and pull it off and sort of, you know, you don't always feel like getting up and giving a big speech. So the fact that you always pull it out of the bag and do it, that sort of strength, that sort of consistency, commitment, whatever it is not to be sneezed at or sniffed at. It's to be really respected. I have huge respect for that. So anyway, I'll leave it there. I'm off to bed. Thanks everybody for joining. Oh wait, hold on a second. There's some super chats or donations or whatever. Of course I have to go through them, right? So just a small few. Roddy Murray, all the usuals. Thanks, lads. It was so nice to catch up with everyone yesterday. I bet it was, and I've been to a lot. I'll be to more in future. I sort of had FOMO about not being there. I'd love to have seen it for myself. I'd love to, there's always a little detail, something you'll pick up on, a vibe that you just won't get watching videos. And that's another thing. If you were following it online and you weren't there, go to the next one. It's always better. It's different. It feels so much more of an event when you're there, just obviously. So anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Ron. Lochray, Era 1014-5, thank you, says, fair play to an ever-growing turnout of people attending, devoting time and effort from all 32 counties of Ireland, but new strategies needed further. Of course, I don't disagree with that. Of course, you need many different things. I don't know if I have the answers necessarily, but like multitude of things going on. But certainly part of that multitude is mobilizing mass demonstrations. Thanks. Concobar Macnessa, I hope I'm pronouncing the old Gaeilge correctly there, gives Cuig euro. Thank you. GRMA says the primary merit of elected officials is protection from people like Mark Malone. You can be associated with politics without the old penalties. Yeah, it's true. So that's the thing about elected officials too. It's elected officials. It's above board. It's this, it's that. Goes a long way. So again, that goes back to the elections. Oh, elections are meaningless and all that. Well, if you have a couple of councillors, the few councillors can speak at the event and they can put in requests and they can do this and that. So yeah, it's not going to change everything. Don't place all your hopes in this or that thing. But I'm telling you, these things come together in extremely positive ways as you go. I mean, I needn't go on and on, but thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Armchair Limerick Nationalist, another regular. Thank you very much. 5, just a super sticker. And Imperator Scritorum gives 6 and says the biggest challenge is winning over the middle class. Yeah, winning over the middle class is huge because we have the working class, however defined. You have sort of like boffin, some sort of obscure intellectual class type people. You know, you have like this extremely successful over the last few years online vanguard, your Burkeans, your live streamers, your just dominating the online commentary like X Twitter. You have that, and that matters hugely. But winning over the middle class is sort of a hard nut to crack. Middle class and sort of so-called elites and stuff, but certainly the middle class. And that's why people like Nick Delahanty go a long way as well. He's got that sort of flavor. He speaks, he's got a certain style, messaging. So I'm ever the middle of the road person on this stuff. I think that there's no big one solution. There's just like, people with high agency doing good things, working hard, being consistent, a multitude of things. It sort of comes together and it sort of builds. And then one day you wake up and there's 30,000 people there and that carries its own significance. And it sort of snowballs in all sorts of different ways. So, winning over the middle class is hard though, because they're so wedded to what they do have, and it's not much. Realistically, it's a lot of debt, slavery and all that. But they're so wedded to the idea that they are a little bit above other people and their car is slightly better and they whatever, and they work in a sort of a good job and all that, that becomes almost like an identity, and they're reluctant to put it at risk, and they're a little bit comfortable and stuff. The usual. I mean, look, you could go back 300 years, people have this like observation about the middle class, but the middle class are becoming more and more squeezed. So that's the thing. Anyway, look, I want to end it there. I don't want to go on and waffle. Thanks very much for joining me. I will talk to you again soon. There's always loads to talk about. And I had an enjoyable stream. I enjoyed the chat there. And I hope you did too. So, ihawa. See you.